Okay, so we'll get started. Okay, so I'm going to go through what we need to know for in general for Purim, and especially this year in terms of any differences that apply because of COVID, because of the difficulties in terms of doing things the way that we regularly would, and then also just take any questions about anything the halachos or anything. So just to go through the basics, I'm just going to go through the basic chronology of Purim, starting from Thursday, with Tainus Esther, going through Tainus Esther, and through Friday with Purim. So there's just to remember the Tainus Esther. I say this, every year is a very, very special day for Tefillah. It's not a sad day. It's not a fast day that we're sad about anything. It's not commemorating anything sad. It's just a day that Chazal set aside to it's like Tefillah day, it's like a day commemorating that Hashem answers us when Be'ez Tzara, when Klal Yisrael davens. So it's not in specific commemoration of the Tefillah and the fasting of Esther, because that took place in Nisan, but there's a day that Chazal set aside to remember, to commemorate the fact that we daven to Hashem Be'ez Tzara, and Hashem saves us. So Tainus Esther is a very, very important day for davening, so much so that if Purim falls out, like it sometimes does, on a Sunday, so we move Tainus Esther back not to Friday, but to Thursday. And even though we can fast on a Friday, just this year we had a Asara B'Teves, right? We fasted Erev Shabbos and broke the fast with Kiddush on Shabbos night. So we could do the same thing with Tainus Esther, but we push it back to Thursday. And the Torah explains, because he says that if we would have had Tainus Esther on Friday, people wouldn't get ready for Shabbos. That's it, right? So people would be so busy with their davening. People would be taking advantage of the day so much. They would be so busy with their tefillos and that they wouldn't get ready for Shabbos. Not the other way around. Like for us, it would be, we'd be so preoccupied with having to get ready for Shabbos that we wouldn't focus so much on the day, probably, right? So, but you just see from that, for halacha, why it was pushed back to Thursday, that it's such an important day for tefillah, a very important day to try to, with everything else going on and getting Mishloach Manos ready and everything, but just to try to focus on davening and taking advantage of the day. And when I say davening, I don't mean, Shachris, Mincha, Shmona Esrei. I just mean taking advantage of talking to Hashem, asking Hashem for what we need, and, davening to Hashem throughout the day. So that's just very important throughout the whole time, through Tainus Esther and Purim Day itself. It's one of the fasts that begins with Alos HaShachar in the morning. So you could look up, that's usually called like Dawn or Alos HaShachar. You could look that up on any website or app that has the Zmanim. So you're allowed to eat up until Alos HaShachar, and then the fast finishes at Tzeis HaKochavim, when the 3 stars come out. And it's like a regular, one of the what we call the minor fast days, which means that you're allowed to brush your teeth in the morning. Just don't swallow any of the water. You're allowed to rinse out your mouth, wash your face. You're allowed to shower. You're allowed to listen to music. It's just eating and drinking that is not allowed. And the extra tefillos of the day that we have, and which includes Avinu Malkeinu in the morning. We don't say Avinu Malkeinu at Mincha, and Anenu at Mincha if you're still fasting. Okay. Also on Tainus Esther is the minhag to give the machzis hashekel. This is a halacha and a minhag to commemorate the fact that this is the time of year that we used to collect the machzis hashekel. So usually in a shul, this is a time that they'll have the like a little bucket in the front of the shul, and every person comes in and they'll have in there, like halachically, what counts as the half a shekel, depending on where you live in the world, a few coins bundled up together, and you put money into this bucket, and you kind of like take that half shekel and own it and put it back in. So if you're married, then your husband should be doing this for you. Otherwise, hopefully your father should be doing this for you. Otherwise, the minhag is women don't do it sort of on their own. But it's just something to remember, to remind your family member. I sometimes don't remember, and I get to shul and I see that it's there. But that's the minhag that we do also on Tainus Esther in the afternoon. Okay. After the fast, so by Tzeis HaKochavim, that's when we would normally be allowed to eat. So we're not allowed to eat a meal then. It's really, the minhag is we don't really eat or drink anything. If a person really needs to, and it's going to be a while until they hear the Megillah, so then they're allowed to drink something or have a light snack. They shouldn't make mizonos and have real food before they hear the Megillah. But then we all have the mitzvah to start to hear the Megillah. This year, this mitzvah applies in Yerushalayim also. Everyone in Klal Yisrael this year hears Megillah Thursday night and Friday. So the fast ends usually with us going to shul and hearing Megillah. Now for this year, I know a lot of shuls are all around are running, cycles of Megillahs with limited numbers of people, and so a lot of shuls have sign-ups, and you have to register in advance to decide when you're going to be going. So obviously, if you have any opportunity in your community to go to a shul and be a part of a laning with a minyan, and do the kriya properly, as close as we would to a regular year, so then that's definitely what you should be doing this year. So if you have that opportunity, I know here there's people that are putting out lists of that there's dozens of Megillah lanings throughout the community. So there's enough that really everybody's hopefully going to be able to hear Megillah in a somewhat regular fashion. Now, what's the halacha in a situation where a person can't? If a person can't go to shul, let's say a person is in quarantine, or let's say in their community, they don't have this option. So the issue is that with Megillah, you can only be yotzei the mitzvah by laning it from an actual klaf. Right, when we all go to the shul and we all hear Megillah together, so we're laning. We're laning, but we're laning through Shomea Ka'ona, the halachic mechanism that I'm listening to the Balkore and my paying attention to him laning. So that makes it like I'm laning. But the laning has to happen from a klaf. It can't just happen from a siddur or chumash or any other type of a sefer. That being said, anybody can lay in the Megillah. A man, a woman, anybody over bar or bas mitzvah can lay in the Megillah. So what the best thing to be done, really the only way that you could be yotzei, is let's say if you would have a person this year who's not able to get to a shul or a small group of people, so then you could have you need the klaf, what you need the physical klaf. And again, you find out in your neighborhood this year a lot of people that people know these halachos, and that there's people with megillahs that have them available for people to do private lanings in their homes, etc. And what you could do is you could listen to a recording of somebody laning the Megillah and read along in the klaf with what's being said. These are also available online this year, especially. But in other words, you don't need to know it all in advance. You don't need to understand and know all of the tunes exactly properly, but the pronunciation of the words and the breaking up of the psukim, a person can listen to a playback of that and read along with it and be yotzei the Megillah that way from beginning to end. And if somebody's doing that, then other people can be present and listen also, and either follow along in the klaf themselves or listen and be yotzei through Shomea Ka'ona. So that's the idea. This is like what people have done in let's say regular non-COVID years, but like people who are in hospitals and people who are stuck at home and situations like that. So they'll read along a klaf while listening to a tape recording. However, over Zoom or over phone or over a recording or anything like that, you cannot be yotzei the mitzvah. You just can't be yotzei. You have to be live and in person with the person who is laning from a klaf, from a proper scroll of a Megillah. So if that's not the situation, just watching that over Zoom doesn't help, and listening to it over the phone doesn't help. If you have your own klaf and you could watch a kriya over Zoom, so then you could do what I just described, is with your own klaf, you could read along to yourself quietly, but read along audibly that while the Balkore is laning, and you could read along with the Balkore. So this year that might be very complicated for some people, but there's really no other eitzah. There's no other way to be mekayim the mitzvah without a klaf. If a person literally has no way to be mekayim the mitzvah, so then they have no way to be mekayim the mitzvah. That could happen, in difficult times. However, under the circumstances, it should be that everybody is hopefully in Klal Yisrael nowadays. We're not poor, and most communities have many Megillahs. Private people have, many private people have Megillahs. Even in Israel and in Kolel communities, every few families has a Megillah here. So it's not something that's, too difficult to do. It'll take longer than usual, probably, because you have to be able to enunciate the words while you're reading along. And that's harder to do than listening to an experienced Balkore who can lane very quickly. Then your Yotze, even if you couldn't articulate it as fast as he is, that you're still Yotze with him. However, this year, if you have to say it yourself, so you have to make sure that you are articulating and enunciating every sound, every syllable, every word properly. So that's all as far as the Megillah, and that has to happen at night and on Friday morning. In other words, this is the mitzvah to do it twice, once at night and once during the day. So everything that we just described as far as how to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Kriyas HaMegillah and the Klaf and everything, so all of that is both on Friday night, Thursday night, after the fast, as well as Erev Shabbos day, what we would call Purim day. Okay. Now, on Purim day, the other mitzvos that we have, which are made a little bit more complicated this year, maybe a little bit by COVID, but also just because it's Erev Shabbos, so we're limited in time and the amount of time in the day available. But the other mitzvos that we have for Purim are Matanos Le'Evyonim, Mishloach Manos, and the Seuda. So let's just go through each of those, one by one. So Mishloach Matanos Le'Evyonim, the mitzvah is, like the pasuk says in the Megillah, Matanot Le'Evyonim, that you have to give to multiple poor people, multiple aniyim, evyonim, and the minimum of multiple is 2. And therefore the halacha is as follows, that the Matanos Le'Evyonim that has to be given, you have to give to at least 2 people the minimum amount that they could get a meal for that amount, like some pizza and a soda. In Israel, the poskim say about 25 shekel is enough to get a basic meal. So therefore, 50 shekel is what a person would have to spend on Matanos Le'Evyonim, 25 shekel each to 2 different people. Now, that being said, that's the bare minimum. In America, I don't know exactly if that's maybe $10 each to 2 people, coming out to $20. Does that make sense? Maybe, or $7 for each for 2 people. Whatever it is, it has to be the amount that is available. Now, the problem with this is that a fewfold. First of all, the money has to be given on Purim itself, on Purim day. And Baruch Hashem, nowadays a lot of us don't know, maybe poor people that are really poor and halachically poor. In order to fit into the category of Matanos Le'Evyonim, a person has to be a certain halachic status of poverty, a certain halachic status. Sounds like but a person has to be halachically poor. Sometimes you can have a person who's in a very difficult financial situation, but they own a house and they might have a mutual fund somewhere, and it doesn't make their situation not difficult. However, it doesn't qualify them as a pauper in halacha. So therefore, this is not a mitzvah that I recommend you try to actually do on your own, unless you know of a situation and you've asked a Rav, and Rav tells you, yes, this is a situation of Matanos Le'Evyonim, and you should do that. However, most of the time, the way that we do this is that we give our money to a Rav or to an organization, and they distribute it for us on Purim day appropriately. So what I do, I'll give you 2 examples, just personally, and then also what I do on behalf of the school. So I take my own money personally, what I'm going to give for Matanos Le'Evyonim. I make sure to give more than just the bare minimum. I try to give as much stuff as I'm able to give at this time is what I tried to give. This Purim is a very, very important time to be giving tzedakah. So I tried to give whatever I'm able to give. I put together and I give it to Rav Asher Weiss, and I say to him, this is from me and from Matanos Le'Evyonim, and he knows to distribute that money on Purim and make sure that my money is getting split up between 2 people, meaning that's his responsibility now in terms of distributing the money on Purim day. And I do the same thing for my family, that each person gives me the money, and I give that also to Rav Weiss, and I do the same thing for the school, and I give him a list. I say, this is this money, or I'll give him a check, and I'll say this money is representing 40 students, each of whom doing the mitzvah of Matanos Le'Evyonim on Purim day, to 2 evyonim, and he'll give out the the money appropriately. And that way even though I'm physically giving the money before Purim, or I'm sending the money, sending a credit card charge or whatever it is, even though I'm doing that before Purim, I'm making him my shliach to give that money on Purim day. So when he gives that money on Purim day, he's being the Makayim, the mitzvah for me. And that's how we do it. So that's definitely the way that I recommend to do Matanos Havyonim. You have to make sure that it's people who have Purim at the same time as you. It should be that you're giving. I mean, I guess this year it could be anywhere in the world, but it has to be that that it's given when it's when you have to be doing the mitzvah. So you should be giving mitzvah, give it in your time zone, so to speak. And for, usually in years when Yerushalayim has a different day of Matanos Lavyonim, this year we also do Matanos Lavyonim on Friday. We do it in Yerushalayim. Well, everything so far we've said until now applies to Yerushalayim the same. Even though it's a Purim Mishloach this year, we don't do the Seuda, we don't do Mishloach Manos on Friday, but everything else that we've been talking about until now, we do also on Friday. So, Megillah and Matanos Lavyonim. But like I said, I recommend that you give it in advance and you give it to a Rav or to an organization. And this way, you're being Mekayim the mitzvah of Matanos Lavyonim properly. Now, that being said, on Purim Day, it's definitely a proper thing to do to give as much tzedakah as you can. There's a halacha on Purim, kol poshet yad nosnim lo. Anybody who asks you for money, so you give, even though normally you're allowed to check and see, is this really an appropriate place to be giving money? But on Purim Day, we give to everybody, so you should make sure that to be able to give tzedakah. However, not all of that tzedakah is necessarily going to qualify as halachic matanos le'evyonim. So just like I keep saying, to make sure in advance to give money to a rav or to an organization, or to give again to your father, to your husband, and say this is for matanos le'evyonim. This is also something a person just has to realize, that this is your individual mitzvah. The fact that you have parents who are doing matanos le'evyonim, or a husband who's doing matanos le'evyonim, it's your mitzvah to do also. So what I do is I have to any of my children who are above bar or bas mitzvah that don't have their own money, so I'll give them 50 shekel. I'll say, this is yours. Okay, now do the mitzvah, make me a shliach to give your matanos le'evyonim, and then they'll give me that money, and I'll again give it on their behalf. But it's not something that like somebody else can do for you. It's your mitzvah to give tzedakah. You can appoint somebody a shliach to take your money and give tzedakah, but it has to be your money. In addition, for this bare minimum of matanos le'evyonim, again in Israel 50 shekel, in America about $20. So that can't come from meiser money. That can't come from any other tzedakah money that you have dedicated. This has to be specific matanos le'evyonim money. Again, that's only for the bare minimum, for that requirement to be Makayim the mitzvah. Beyond that amount, Purim Day is a great day to distribute meiser money. If you've got meiser money saved up, and you want to have cash available and be able to give out to people that you see on Purim, depending on what community you're in and how many people are out and about during COVID this year. But Purim Day is a very, very good day for giving tzedakah, and I say very good, I mean both halachically, that's the halacha of the day, and it's also, there's a very big inyan in terms of bringing the shefa down from Shemayim to be just giving freely, distributing freely our money on Purim and giving it out to as many people as we can. So it's a very important day for tzedakah. And finally, I'll say what the Rambam writes, a very famous lines from the Rambam, that a person, the bigger mitzvah for all of these days of simcha, the real mitzvah of simcha is to be Mesameach Acherim. Our real simcha should be to know that we're not only happy, but everyone else is happy. And the Rambam writes that we should be spending more money on matanos le'evyonim than on the mitzvahs that make us happy. Mishloach manos, we enjoy giving those nice, big, elaborate mishloach manos. The Seudah of Purim, we're enjoying the food and the wine. Right? So the Rambam writes we should give the aniyim, we should give more than what we're taking, so to speak, for ourselves. So that's just another point to keep in mind, when we're allocating our spending for Purim, our budget, that matanos le'evyonim should get the bulk of it, and then the rest of it we could spend. But that really should be that we're spending more on matanos le'evyonim than on the other mitzvahs of Purim. One moment, please. Okay. So that's as far as the mitzvah of tzedakah is concerned. So hopefully now, let's say it's about 10 a.m. on Purim morning, on Erev Shabbos. So you've already, you've been Mekayim your mitzvah Matanos Avyonim because you've given that in advance. You've already, let's say, you've heard the Megillah. So now you've got two mitzvahs left. Again, this is for everybody outside of Yerushalayim or the walled cities. The rest of these mitzvahs we're going to be doing on Sunday. So anything I say now for the mitzvahs of Mishloach Manos and the Seudah, for everybody in Yerushalayim, this is going to apply on Sunday. So this is as follows. Mishloach Manos, this, again, the famous, hopefully by now, I think a lot of people know that it's wrong, but this famous misnomer that you have to give two different brachos is, incorrect. The halacha is the Mishloach Manos ish l're'ehu. You have to give two manos, two items to one person. So just like we said by Matanos Avyonim, the bare minimum is the one meal amount to two people. So the Mishloach Manos is two manos, two types of food to at least one person. And again, that's the bare minimum. That's just to be Mekayim, the actual mitzvah. As long as the two foods are considered to be different, like different taste and different food, it doesn't matter if they're two different brachos. The poskim write, if you give even like a chicken leg and a piece of schnitzel, that are cooked differently, so those are considered two different foods, even though it came from the same chicken. So anything like that is fine. So that's that's the minimum. Obviously, people do more elaborate mishloach manos than that, and people give more, and that's fine, and it's wonderful, and it's an important part of the day. But again, just to make sure that to actually be Mekayim the mitzvah, it has to be on Purim Day itself, going from you to another person, at least two readily edible food items. It can't be food items that need to be prepared to be eaten. It has to be food that is like, or ready to eat. It doesn't have to be exactly as is. It could be you need to heat it up in order to eat it or something, but it can't be food that needs to be cooked or anything like that. It should be food that's ready to be eaten, and the ikar mitzvahs really should be food that people could have at the seudah. That's a hiddur, or let's say, I used to try. I don't know if I really do this anymore, but I used to try to at least give one person like some meat and wine or something like that to have him to have food at the seudah. I don't know if that's really such a I don't know why I stopped doing that, but there is such an Indian to do that, to give food that people actually eat. But most people don't really do that, and we just give whatever theme or whatever it is that we're doing. So just in terms of this year, I got a few questions about this. People who are in quarantine, they still have to try to do this mitzvah if possible. As any way that they can exchange anything else. So if they get food deliveries or take out their garbage or anything like that, so they have to try to arrange to give and receive mishloach manos that way. They could leave mishloach manos out on their doorstep for somebody to take. And let this food be in wrapped, sealed packages, and in the biohazard wrapping or whatever, and the person will be very careful with it. But if you leave food for somebody out on your doorstep and they take it, and you left it for them, and they know it's for you, they know it's from you, and they take it, so that you're mekayim the mitzvah, even if you don't physically hand it to them. And the same thing if they leave food for you. So it really, it shouldn't be, unless again, if a person is mamash on their own in quarantine and they have no way to do it, so there's no question that you can't give mishloach manos over Zoom. Or I guess maybe you could send something through a courier or something, but again, it would have to get there on Purim Day itself. And that's also, I just wanted to point out, so a lot of these things that we order that like they call mishloach manos are not really mishloach manos. Right? Most of the time when you're sending a basket or a fruit basket or whatever, any of these types of things, usually they're not arriving on Purim Day. If they would arrive on Purim Day, so then you'd be yotzei the mitzvah. But if it's not arriving on Purim Day, so then it doesn't count as mishloach manos. And also, if you chip in with other people towards mishloach manos, so again, it's very nice, and you're being mekayim the inyan of marbe reos, of increasing friendship and solidarity on Purim, but that's not, you're not mekayim your mitzvah of mishloach manos, because you chipped in towards somebody receiving food, but that's not you giving two food items to one person on Purim. So that's just, just to make sure to remember that. And also similar to what we said when it came to Matanos Levyonim, this is a mitzvah on each individual. Somebody can't do this mitzvah for you. So, if you're at home, you have to make sure and your husband is going around and delivering, or one of your parents or siblings. So you have to make sure to give them something to give on your behalf, if they're going to one of your friend's house or something like that. But it has to be that it's your food that you are sending to somebody else. So that's as far as the mitzvah of Mishloach Manos is concerned. Finally, we have the mitzvah of the Su'udah, which this year, just for those having it on Erev Shabbos, it really is preferable to do it earlier in the day. That's because anytime on Erev Shabbos, a person is not supposed to eat so close to Shabbos night. We're supposed to enter into Shabbos with an appetite. So it's better to make the Suda earlier in the day. There's there's a lot of people who are very makpid to do this and have their Purim Suda, early in the morning, Friday morning, so that by the time Shabbos comes, they've already been able to, rest and sober up and be, back to themselves, etc. And there's some people who don't do that. They make their Suda in the afternoon and they sort of go into Shabbos and make Kabbalah Shabbos, and that's also acceptable. There's all different approaches to this and all different levels of people celebrating Purim and different levels of people being drunk and etc. So it really just depends on what works best for your situation. But like lechatchila, the best thing to do would be to make the Su'udah earlier in the day, preferably finishing before chatzos, before midday, which is kind of early these days. You have to look on a luach to know exactly when it is, but it's somewhere in the 12 o'clock range, 12:30, 12:20, and to try to finish the Su'udah by then, so that by the time Shabbos comes in at night, you already have an appetite and you're able to eat and and such. And that's the mitzvah of the Purim Su'udah. As far as drinking is concerned, so there's all different approaches, as we know. The Mishnah Berurah writes, and this is the basic for everything in life. If a person is going to act inappropriately and do even one avera in a state of inebriation, so then it's for sure the wrong thing for that person to drink, and they should not be mekayim this mitzvah through drinking. It's just not appropriate. It's yatzas charo behefsedo, right? The loss is greater than the gain, and a person shouldn't do it. If, however, a person is able to drink and become more connected to Hashem through that, so this is the one day a year that we let ourselves do that. The one day a year that we let ourselves escape our das, escape the regular way of thinking about things, and we're able to get an elevated sense together with the kedusha of the day, the kedusha of Purim, and the kedusha of the ha'ara of the day, and the removal of the seichel of a person. So then there's a certain ruchnius maila a person can reach through that state. However, that's not what you often see, and certainly just people drinking and acting ridiculous and being inappropriate and anything like that is absolutely not what the day is about, and not what it should be, and not what should happen. So it's supposed to be a day of simcha, but obviously a simcha of appropriate simcha and a simcha of kedusha, etc. So that's just an important idea to remember. Finally, the last halacha of the whole day, and this applies in Chutz La'aretz on Friday, or everywhere except for Yerushalayim on Friday, on Erev Shabbos, and that's the halacha of Al Hanisim. Starting from Thursday night and all of Friday, so anytime you're davening or benching, so you add Al Hanisim into your davening and benching. In Yerushalayim this year, because of the strange Purim Meshulish that we have, so this is what we're doing on Shabbos. On Friday night at our Shabbos meal and Shabbos day, we're adding Al Hanisim into our benching and into all of our Shmona Esreis, and that's all that we're doing on Shabbos this year, except for the Kriyas HaTorah and Shul is a little bit different. But on Shabbos this year in Yerushalayim, it's Al Hanisim, and like I said, in Chutz La'aretz or everywhere else outside of Yerushalayim. So that's on Friday, you're adding Al Hanisim into your Shmona Esrei and into benching. If you forget it, You can add it right at the end, but where it says Yehu L'Ratzon, over there's like a Harachaman that you could say. And if you forget to say it, then you don't go back, you don't repeat Shemona Esrei, you don't repeat benching. We just missed the Tefillah of Al Hanisim. So that's the general overview of the halachos. I'll if there's any questions, I'll take any specific questions. I'm very much hoping that in a lot of communities, I'm sure it's not going to be back to normal in terms of the size of gatherings and things like that are going on, but hopefully people are going to be enjoying Purim Seudas and hopefully some sense of getting things back to normal a little bit. If there's any questions, I'll take any questions. Otherwise,
yeah, I actually do have a question. I guess it's more personal, I guess, but I don't know. But basically, I usually work Friday mornings. Before I was like, I usually finish at 2, but I'm gonna try to cut my shift shorter. But I don't know, because now with the Suda, because I think you said that it's best to really do it during Chatzot. So what do you suggest?
Look, if you can't, then you can't. You know what I mean? In other words, like it's do you have a scheduled Suda that you're planning on going to at a particular time?
No, I have to ask. So I'm not sure.
Right. So look, if you don't have a Suda that you're planning on going to, so then maybe bring a deli sandwich or something to work, and you can be Mekayim the mitzvah that way. You know what I mean? You could be Mekayim. I didn't mention this. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this. I kind of skipped over. So I thank you for bringing this up. At the Suda, you have to wash on bread and eat meat. That I just mentioned that as part of the basic halachos of the Suda. The Suda should, ideally it should be a proper su'uda where everyone sits together and washes on bread and eats a big meal together. That's the way it should be, if we could be. But sometimes a person is at work or stuck, so the minimum that you should be doing at least is to be washing on bread and having meat, like any type of meat or chicken that you enjoy, whatever is something that you like. So if you can do that, so that would probably be the best thing to do if you're able to eat that sometime in the morning. And then even if you join somebody else's su'uda later in the day, you could do that. You don't have to wash over there and bench, and you don't have to eat a lot. You could just hang out and snack, and that's okay, because don't eat too much, and then you'll be okay for Shabbos. And that way you could be Makayim your mitzvah in the morning and then attend the Purim Suda in the afternoon to enjoy the Purim Suda. You know what I mean?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so that's a good idea for people who have that situation, especially this year. If you make yourself a deli sandwich or something like that at work and you eat that in the morning, so then you can enjoy a Suda later in the day without having to eat. Okay, so one of the questions that was posted was about the Megillah over Zoom. So we addressed that at the beginning. You can only do that if you're actually leaning from a klaf, but you'll listen to the to the recording and you'll hear how to do that. Okay, ladies. So I wish you all a Purim Sameach. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Is it a thing that you're supposed to give shalach manos to people who you're not really friends with to make a better relationship?
It's a thing to be marbe reus on Purim, meaning it's a thing to do friendly things and to increase friendship and to increase connections between people, etc. So if giving something like that to somebody would make them feel good, and so then it's but that it doesn't say that that's the halacha, to give to your least favorite person. That would kind of be insulting then, right? Like to everybody who's getting them shalach manos. The idea is to increase reos, increase friendship. So for sure, if somebody would be like, oh wow, that's so nice, I wouldn't have expected to get from Abigail, that's really sweet. So then that's wonderful, that's great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, everybody, Purim Sameach.